Your mic is switched off.
Yeah, visible, ma'am. Visible.
Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Hope Sangeeta ma'am, we will start by your mic is switched off. Your
Yes,
mic is
ma'am.
switched off. We will start by 4:10 and till what time you want me to?
Because the
And what
participants
time?
are, ma'am.
No problem, no problem. No, will the session be till 5:30 or 6 o'clock you want me to?
5:30, ma'am.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Let the participants join. Yeah. Ma'am, I think if we have till 5:15 or 5:10, then till 5:30 we can have the questionnaire session, right?
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
5, yes?
Yeah, ma'am. From 5:15, we can start our question session,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes, yes, yes.
Hello, Lalita ma'am.
Hello. Hello.
How are you, ma'am?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
Do you remember me?
Yeah, yes.
Well, tech.
Definitely. Thank
Where
you.
are you, ma'am, now?
Just a minute. I'm just coordinating with her. I'll
Okay,
talk
okay,
to you.
ma'am. You can carry on.
Tamil. Yeah, let us start Tamil. Tamil. Okay, ma'am, let us start.
Oh, thank you.
Good evening, one and all. Let us start our day 2 webinar on national level, 2-day national level webinar. This is Dr. Sangeeta, at PG Department of English, Thiruvalluvar University, Constituent College, Kallakurichi. We are so happy to provide such webinars to the welfare of the students and also to the staff members. I feel immensely honored to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor S. Thamarichilvi ma'am, and our respected registrar for allowing us to conduct such webinars. And this is our second 2-day international level webinar. I thank to all our higher authorities of our Thiruvalluvar University, Vellore, and I welcome all our fellow participants because without them the program would be nothing. Their active participation in all our programs gives very happiness and encouragement to us to conduct such webinars. So I welcome you all and thank you. I welcome our resource person, Mrs. Lalita ma'am from Daman as our resource person today. She is a good translator of various books from Tamil to English and English to Tamil. And she has presented papers in several universities and also in colleges. She is also a placement and soft skill trainee for BE, BTech and MBA students. And she is a mentor coordinator and students counselor for BE, BTech students. And she published so many articles in national and international and Scopus indexed journals. And she has attended STTTP, FDP organized NITTTR, Bhopal, Chandigarh, Chennai, Goa on various professional topics. And she has attended many seminars, conferences, and webinars, and also some workshops organized by various universities, colleges, LTI and LTIF, ELTIF and TAI, etc. And she organized seminars, conferences, FDPs, webinars, and some workshops. Question paper setter for Periyar University, Bharatdasan University, and Dr. MGR Educational and Research Institute University. And she has compared many programs on the on stage in both English and Tamil. And she has worked as an academic coordinator at Vatsala School, Moti Daman, from 27 to 19 to 29/6/2019. And she is in the she has the membership of English Language Teachers Association of India, ELTI, and English Language Teachers Indication Forum, ELTIF. And she has the membership of in Translators Association of India, TAI. And she coordinates so many she has so many co-curricular activities, and such outstanding person is our resource person. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you for your warm welcome.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Your hearty welcome makes me more enthusiastic towards my presentation. Hope I have the audience enjoy it. Thank you so much. Can I start?
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Thank you. Translation. Today's topic given to me is a vast area. It is actually a science and an art. Many of us, we don't know what is translation. It is actually that comes from our birth. For example, it is the art of rendering the meaning of one text into another language, the source language into the target language. What is the source language? The language from which we take it is called the source language. The target language, the language into which we are going to translate, is called the target language. But when we take it technically, it is a science. The art of translation has been coming from our birth. Let us please take the word mom. The word mother in English is called as mom. In our Indian culture, take in other languages, the root word is mom. In Hindi, we call ma, the North Indian languages. In South Indian languages, we called amma. It has come from the root word mata, ma. So any translated word, it comes from the root word. Translation is a science. It is a craft where attempts are made to replace the message in one language by the another. It is a bridge between the languages. It connects people. It connects thoughts. It connects ideas. It is both an art and a craft. A wonderful art and a craft. That is, it involves accurate, controlled manipulation of the language, tempered by a degree of freedom, your imagination, and creativity. That is translation. From the word, we can understand trans meaning carrying across. Lation is a process. The carrying across the meaning of one language into another language is translation. Carrying across the meaning of one language, the source language, into the target language. Source language is the original book. Target language is the language in which you are going to translate. So carrying across the meaning of one language into another language is translation without changing the original meaning of the text, the original text. Translation, when we speak about translation, the characteristics of translation, F. Finlay, a great translator, he has observed it should ideally make the same impression on the native speaker of the target language who has conversant with the subject matter of the original as the original did on the native speaker of the social and the source language. Translation is not merely translating the words, but the meaning of the words. It is more difficult to write a book. Definitely, translating a book, it is very difficult than writing a book. You can write a book easily, but translating a book involves so many procedures. I would like to quote a 12 set of axioms from Shastri. He has taken these axioms from the translator Savoy. He says, a 12 set of axioms on translation. A translation must give the words of the original. The translation must have the ideas of the original work. A translation should read like the original work. A translation should reflect the style of the original. It must possess the style of the translation. It should read as a contemporary of the original. It should read as the contemporary of the translation. A translator may add or omit from the original. Sometimes, when needed, he may never add or omit from the original. Here we have to be careful. A translation of verse should be in verse should be in prose. It must read like a translation. Poetic translation must be in poetic translation. He gives 12 sets of axioms. These axioms, actually, when we look at, it looks very self-contradictory. But this is an approach towards the theories like semantic translation and communicative translation. Spoken English is not written English. Any spoken language is not written language. Like every other contemporary research scholar on translation, Eugene Neda, he also says, translation is probably the most complex type of event yet produced in the evolution of the cosmos. It is armed primarily for readers in taking the message and spirit of the work and then to the readers everywhere. Because you cannot translate it actually, you don't have equivalent words for some words. This is what happens. These words explain in detail the uniqueness as well as the immensity of an endeavor in translation. It always takes a great research in doing a translation work because it must not leave the original text. You must not leave the original text. You cannot leave the content of the original text. It must reach out to the reader. You cannot absorb words as it is because today, when we take languages, every language is like a sponge. They absorb words from other languages. For example, today, English language that has been developed has got many root words from other languages. Let me give an example. That is how a language develops. We take geometry. This word has come from Greek. Geo means earth. Metry, it is metric measurement. The metric measurement of the earth and its measurements is geometry. So root words are being taken. Psychology, logos is study. Psycho means mind. Study of the mind is psychology. So we need to understand the words when we translate. Certain words cannot be translated. When we write the words as such, it is called transliteration. It is called transliteration. For example, when we write Rama, we don't have a literal translated word in English. We write R-A-M-A, Rama. When we write Jesus, we write Jesus. Then, as per our style, we just modify the names. We modify the names as per our area, our local languages. That is modification of the language. That is not translation. So it always seems that this translation is probably a very complex type of event that is produced in the evolution of cosmos. It is even still it is a research and it is primarily for the readers in taking the message and the spirit of the work and then to the readers everywhere. These words, they explain in detail the uniqueness as well as the immensity of an endeavor in translation. While speaking on the general characteristics of translation, Professor Glenathan, he says that all translations are a kind of illusion. They are not 100% perfect. They are not 100% perfect. They are more or less perfect according to the circumstances and varying with the skill of the translator. It generally happens. It is an attempt to naturalize the foreign work. For example, when we take the Bible, it has been translated in the biblical language. It is not in the original native language. It has got its own biblical style. You take the Ramayana, you take the Mahabharata, whichever is translated, it has got its own naturalization, it has got its own adaptive words, the source language and the target language words, the influence of Sanskrit, the influence of the Greek, the Latin in the Bible. Naturally, when we write a formula in mathematics, when that is being taught to the students, sin and cos is always sin and cos. You cannot translate those words when you're translating into the local language. because they are mathematical terms. Mathematical terms, you cannot change those words. So it is only transliterated. When the word is written as such, it is called transliteration. It is not translation. When it is written originally, it is transliteration. Literally, the word is written in the target language also. And it is armed primarily for readers in taking the message and spirit of the work. So these words explain how it has got the immensity of an endeavor in translation. 100%. Now, it always draws a picture, or it seems like you have a glass in front of you. Seems like just a reflection of the original. That is translation. But it is neither an original, but nor a translated work. But it must seem like the original. When it is a picture itself that envisages our own attention. Translation, it can be of two types. The first type is giving the scope of the text of the source language, and the second is a word translation. There are so many types of translations. It requires, if a translated work is something more or less than the source language, then it is no longer a translation, but it moves to the sphere of summary. Finale, he very well quotes that a translation is that it must capture the style and the atmosphere of the original. Before selecting the appropriate method of translation, the translator's task is to understand the original text, analyze it, make some generalizations. He must be profound in the target language also. So profundity of both the source language and the target language is very important. The theme of the text must be faithfully represented through the translator. The aim of the translator is to give the sound sense and the feel of the text. When you read the target source language, the same feel you must get in the target language, both the source language and the target language. For example, when you read Mahabharata of Rajaji in English and in your target language, it must have the same impact. Rajaji's Mahabharata has been translated by himself in various languages. It gives the same feeling. That must be the impact. There are various procedures when we take up into the theory of translation. It is literal translation, transference, naturalization, transposition, natural translation, translation couplets, recreative translation, and transcreation. Now, literal translation, let me talk one by one. It is a basic translation procedure. It looks for the primary or the denotative meaning of the words and not for the connotative meaning. A text which does not have the connotative or the extended meaning can be literally translated. It starts with word for word translation, and then it moves for phrase for word phrase, clause for clause, and collocation for collocation. When we take up phrase for phrase and clause for clause, you don't get equivalent phrases. You don't get equivalent clauses. So it has to be somewhere thematic translation or the equivalence. Equivalence is being used there. Because when we translate certain proverbs or themes or ideas, it cannot be translated literally. It cannot be translated. So what happens? It moves. So in the language where there is an equivalence, we go up to equivalence in translation. Literal translation, it is very hygienic if the source and the target language belong to the same family. For example, translating from Telugu to Kannada, yes, Malayalam to Tamil, the root languages are the same. Hindi and Sanskrit, yes, only certain things might differ, but it has the same grammatical concepts, only a small variance is there. There is not much of a cultural variance. So even the language and the dialect might not vary more. As the source language and the target languages are homogeneous texts, they are of the same category. Literal translation, it works very well. But if the source language and the subtext are different, the literal translation totally fails. This is because the other text, it has got metaphorical, figurative, and connotative meanings. The text, when literal translation works effectively, they are scientific, legal, administrative, and medical texts. There, these types of translation really work. Now, let me come into transference. The word transference comes from the word transfer. We transfer the source of the language meaning into the target language text. Here, the whole system of the alphabet is transferred as it is, without any damage from the source language into the target language. Transference comes in when there is a wide difference between the source language and the target language. That is, when the source language exhibits one culture and the target language exhibits another culture. Definitely there is a difference. Transference, it includes transliteration. Transliteration. For example, when we take the word coffee, it is actually coming from the word caffeine, caffeine seeds. That is being taken and it has been added into the word coffee. In English, it has been coffee. And when it came to India, according to the state languages, influence of the state languages, in South you take it up, it becomes kapi. In North you take copy. So according to the native, you go to Kerala, and the sir, copy vano. You go to Tamil Nadu, sir, copy sapringla. It is not coffee. So you go to the northern states, in various ways, there actually tea is preferred. So when they write the word tea also, it is different. Chai. It has got a translation, but when they ask about tea, chai, we can easily find out this in the railway stations. The way they are spoken and the way they are written. The influence of the local language is so much that this we can find in translation. This is called transliteration. Literally, it is being translated. The word Amma, they write it as Amma. Many of our Indian authors from R.K. Narayan, many authors, even now, they write Amma as only Amma. Ma, even if it is an English text, the word mother is not changed. Right? So the influence of the local language is there in our English authors also, the Indian English authors. Then only they can bring out the feeling that they are in a culture, the text is being written in a culture where the situation is, and then they can reach out to the audience. For the purpose, the influence of the local language and the culture is also being mixed in Indian writings. In Indian writings. Many of our English texts have the words. Novels, when you read the novels, it is being done. When it is, this is transference. In the heart of it is the heart of transference. It is the art of transference. So transliteration is finding equivalent script between the source language and target language. Words or situations going for transliteration are proper names, geographical names, topographical elements, names of newspapers, journals, magazines, the title of films, dramas, literary works, names of streets, banks, roads, institutions, and hospitals. all these proper nouns are written as it is. They are written as it is. But even then, we can find a change if there is a spelling mistake. It gives a drastic change in the meaning. Drastic change in the meaning because the influence of our local languages, our mother tongue, and the other languages has a great impact in English language. The impact of English is there in our languages because they bring out the spoken English into the written English. When it is with English, imagine India has a very rich culture with so many languages. Proud to be an Indian. How many of us know India is the only country which has got so many languages? And definitely, this is one presentation, let me tell you, when imagine the one text Mahabharata and one text Ramayana, it has been translated into all Indian languages. The root language written by the main text that has been written by Valmiki and Vedavyasa, that the poetic work has been translated into first Sanskrit, and then the prosaic work has been, the poetic work has been translated into prose work, then translated into so many languages. The first credit goes to Rajagopalachari. It was he who gave us. And the first scribe was none other less the Lord Vinayaka. When Vedavyasa he dictated, when he said there was an agreement with him, between them, I will be telling out, and without stopping, you're going to write. So, by the way of telling, he started writing. He was the first scribe. Today, people who are scribes, they are made professionals. We write for blind people. Yes, is it not an art? Generation hence, this trend is continuing. This trend is continuing. So, the transliteration is being done only for these things. There must be a sense of naturalization. Here, the emphasis is there on the target language. The whole source of the source language, culture, language, setting are all completely transformed, or they are naturalized into the target language. That is, translating the source language text in such a way that the target language, it looks like is original. You must not be able to find the difference between the two. So the translator must have explicit knowledge about both the source language and the target language. He must know the text completely, what it is about. Today, when we are translating a letter from one language to another, we have the machine translation nowadays. The machine translation looks very horrible, literally. Very horrible. Imagine when the original texts have been translated into so many languages. Hats off to them. So that is the charm. It must have a naturalization so that people are really engulfed in reading. They have the charm of reading. They enjoy reading and know that this is the original. When you read the Bible, you never find the difference. You never find the difference. It is in the biblical language. From the original language, in so many world languages, it has been translated. Nobody finds the difference. Right? That must be the quality. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata have been translated. So many authors have translated. They take permission from the translators. And when you read the English Hindu newspaper and the Tamil Hindu newspaper, you don't find any difference. Yes, the news is the same. Language proficiency, the translator must have the proficiency of the language. This is very important. So only the proper names and the proper nouns are not translated. It is as it is. It is only transliterated. It must look like an original. So naturalization is nothing but adapting the convention and having the taste of the source language so that it suits the target language. We have one more called the transposition. This is transposition is transferring the grammar of the source language to target language as it is without any damage. It is possible only when the source and the target language have one-to-one correspondence. For example, some grammatical thing, you take Hindi and Sanskrit, only a little variance is there in the grammar forms, right? But when we are translating into from Tamil to English or Hindi to English, English to Hindi, excuse me, and other languages, naturally what happens, this transposition cannot be used because the subject, verb, and the object, direct object, indirect object in a sentence, it naturally changes. The sentence form, it actually changes because even in French, when we translate, it naturally changes. So you cannot just translate. When we translate, we have to know the theme and the idea. That is very important. Natural translation, the next one. The translator, he does not try or to copy or imitate the style of the original text or the author. On the other hand, he tries to use his own style. He uses his own style. Example, yes, wonderful. Pied Piper of Hamelin. Wonderfully said, sir. So, it so happens. So, once it just comes, the translation couplets when we use. Nowadays, we have all the couplet verses. Even the Tirukural from the Tamil has been translated into English. So many works from Kannada, Gujarati, Hindi, and Sanskrit have been translated. The couplet verses have been translated. Poetry. For example, Rabindranath Tagore's works have been Gitanjali from Bengali, it has been translated into English, but you cannot find any variants because he himself translated. He himself translated, right? Because he knew the original text. He wrote it in Bengali. He was able to translate in English because he is now the original person who has written the work and who is translating the work. He knows his own work. He has translated. But when others translate, we need to have the original feeling of the original author. This is very important. This is where the correspondence between the two languages is very, very important. So we don't copy, right? So in natural translation, he uses his own style. Translation couplets is the original word of transliteration, as I told you, and then giving the description of the word in the bracket. You translate the couplets according to the rhyme scheme, and then you just give the meaning of the word in the bracket. The necessity for translation couplet arises. The target language, they express various ideas, the distinct ideas and distinct cultures. So we will not be able to understand when there is a cultural variance. So the meanings are just given in the brackets. This is translation couplets. The culture specific and the language specific terms are translated and their meanings and the significance in the target language are given in the parenthesis. It has been given. So what happens? This originality is not lost once it has been given. So that is more important. But that is why I told you Translation is neither a science nor an art. It involves both. It involves both. When you are doing a scientific research, is when you're doing a mathematical problem, is when you're drawing, when you make a painting work, you need to be both artistic and calculative. Otherwise, the beauty of the picture is lost. So is translation. You need to have the influence of both an artist and a scientist. A mathematical calculation, understand the language, then create, because it is like creating the way they are spoken and the way they are written. The influence of
Ma'am? Hello, ma'am? Lalita, ma'am?
Ma'am has left the meeting, ma'am.
No, ma'am has left. What happened?
hello, hello. So the translation,
Continue, ma'am.
yeah, I think there's been some technical problem. Sorry. So natural translation. So it has got its own style, and there is a necessity of translation. So what happens? We give it in the bracket. The necessity for translation couplet arises when source language and target language, they represent distinct ideas. The culture and the language specific terms are transliterated. For example, when we write Bhagwan, Bhagwan is God. Bhagwan is God. Everywhere when we write, when we take the Mahabharata, Bhagwan is being told. Right? But today, they are able to understand the Gita, how well we have understood the Bible, how well we have taken the Quran. The Bhagavad Gita has been taken so well in US and other countries. So the translation and transliteration, it is being taken across the world. Today, when a content is spoken in the UNO, why even in the parliament, not all people know English. So when the speaker speaks, not all people know Hindi. So what happened? There is a translator who translates into the local language. In all the languages, it is being translated and they are able to get the message. That is how translation is being done. So the meanings and the significance in the target language are given in the parenthesis. So there is something called the recreative translation. It is otherwise known as adaptation, recreative, being created again. So it is the making of a new thing from the old. Now, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata written by Rajagopalachari, it was a recreative translation because the original verse was different. It was different, but now it is totally different. In this translation structure, the character, the settings, the events of the source language text serve only as the basis for the writer of the target language. He attempts to make out a new source material, a work of his own. For example, when you take Kamba Ramayanam, it is written by Kambar, right? He has taken only the concept from Ramayana and he has written in Tamil. Same way in Telugu. Take it in Kannada. Yes, they have taken the works. The work of Rabindranath Tagore, Gitanjali, has been translated in Tamil. It has been translated in Kannada, in Hindi. So works have been translated. Bengali works have been translated. Why Punjabi works have been translated? Yes, many works by many authors. The reason why we are all able to know various authors and various writers. Today, the Hindu news, what is being given, the news that is being given in Times of India, it is totally translated and it has been published in all the national languages and every language has got its own paper. The Hindu has got various this paper in various languages. The Times of India, it has got paper in various languages. The content is the same. But the author who translates, the translators, it is really a scientific work, a mathematical calculation, a linguistic calculation, a literal calculation, that he has to use the words correctly. For example, if they orally, when we say the word good morning, good morning, yeah. When I say good morning, you all feel energetic. Good morning, yeah. There's a difference. Good morning, yeah. There is naturally a sense of sarcasm. So when a translator is translating the work, especially the words and the verses used in the original text, he has to understand the dialogues. He has to understand the content of the source language, then translate into the target language. Even if it is a word, oh, wow. When you say are you saying okay, or sarcastically, or see, the sounds, it varies. You need to know the situation, that is thematic. Understand the situation. He is making a total recreation. It has got the structure, the setting of events and everything, they serve as a basis. So it is neither translation nor the manner of the translation in which it translates. The content also matters. In Paradise Lost, Milton worked on the Bible story. How beautifully he has brought out the story of the Bible in Paradise Lost. No one can say that it is a translation of the Bible, but everyone considers it only as a literary work, an exemplary work. An exemplary work. No one can say that it is a translation of the Bible, but Paradise Lost is a poetic verse of the Bible. Right? So it is a recreation. It has been recreated in the poetic word, or it is called adaptation. In transcreation, the translator, he reconstructs the subject from the source language into the target language. The process involves a great tussle with the diction, really. They have to fight with the diction, vocabulary, the semantics, the phonetics, the syntax, and the structure. This process makes the translator a clarifier. He has to be the interpreter because he has to convey the content. He has to be an enricher because he cuts, he edits, he adds, alters, he amplifies, modifies the subject to suit into the linguistic flavor and the culture of his readers, not losing the originality of the text. Not losing the originality of the text. This is an attempt to translate a text. If a new product is produced, it is called transcreation. Now, the importance of translation. Today, our age is considered as the age of translation. We are all gifted. We know many things by translation. It is used in many fields like literature, culture, economics, politics, medicine, religion, science, various facts. Right? We get to know many scientific information through translation. It is being done. J.V. Sastry, he says, analyzing translation as a craft, he explains the word of Hartman. Translation is both a process and a product. Translation is a subject for research and an aid to research. Translation is a data on creativity and a creative work. I repeat, he says, translation is both a process and a product. Translation is a subject for research and an aid to research. Translation is a data on creativity and a creative work. Now, the cultural value of translation in language and literature. In general, translation represents the commerce of ideas between two people. Here it is the cultural value. The lifeblood of human culture travels along the veins of translation. Today, Americans respect Indian culture because our culture has been taken over there, right? They follow. Here, all religions, India is one country where all type of religions are being accepted. All languages are being accepted. Right? Hats off to translation. It has been one source of uniting people. Right? So, here it is a cultural value, the lifeblood of human culture. It travels along the veins of translation. It is one of the wonderful devices which our horizons are extended, through which our horizons are extended. Indian translation, the ways in which our languages, our contents are being translated. People from other countries, they come and read our books. Today, Buddhism is there in China because people have come and taken our culture. It has been translated into Chinese. Definitely. It is foremost device. And these apprised volume of the translations, it is assimilated in literature. And once it is enjoyed, when read in the original translation, it is not possible for people to master many languages. Definitely. All of us cannot definitely translate or read in all languages, and we may not know many languages. But when we read in the language what we know, it gives us a satisfying desire. We fulfill our desire. The first Chinese Buddhist, for example, translated some of the Sanskrit works into Chinese. Translation then, it was not only a road where our culture was taken, the scholarly class to a larger community. It would be false idealism to expect any general public today to read all the books of original languages. Indeed, the volume, the merit of translations gives a fair index of the health and the potency of any culture. You cannot equate any culture. But translation has different aspects in different lands. In these cases, there are problems when we come to translation. In countries blessed with unusually large and active intellectual classes, almost every educated person reads one foreign language with some facility. So translation of distinctions and in abundance appear. In India, language conditions present problems so complex that only a native Indian should presume to deal with them. Translation then, to say the least, it becomes a major problem for our Indians. Because the impact of our local language has more influence. But many of them, when they know many languages, they are able to survive anywhere. It becomes the survival of the fittest. They're able to translate their ideas. They're able to say, definitely. Historically, when we speak, trade, religion have been the major incentives to translation. With aesthetic demands important and they're following in their wake, it is remarkable how few words are needed to communicate a business transaction. You need not be a literal scholar to translation. But basic words, when you speak in the local language, the customers are so happy. That's why people from the north have come to the south, and people from the south are able to extend their arms to the north. Definitely, people are able to go anywhere across the world. So, knowing a language is actually an additional advantage. It is very wonderful. Here, religion usually that is voluble. It has evoked the works of tasty and wonderfully vastly more literary distinction. If faith was to be propagated, translation was a necessity. That is how books like the Bible, Mahabharata, Homer's Odyssey, the Ramayana, the Tirukkural, and many other books have been translated in almost the world languages. In the wake of these movements came translations as a secular literature. In some places, it has become a sort of adaptation with respect to the religion and culture. This is simply to say that no such thing is a perfect translation. It may be beautiful in style, it may be superlative in a work of art, but it cannot be completely faithful to its original. No translator can be faithful to the original, but he has to keep the original. So it is both a science and an art. The style of one generation is not that of the another. The very existence of translation, it argues for the adjustment between the foreign language and the public work. Definitely. So, by virtually a definition of compromise, no substantiative word in one language has a relative equivalent precise work in another. In no work are all passages equally they're same. But translation is an art of approximation. We are able to give the approximate work, the equivalent work. So it is closely connected with the development and the growth of religious significance, the transcendence of geographical boundaries, time, religion which is universal, and the common parts of the world, right? The translation of Pali Buddhism from it has been translated. Christianity of Latin language, it came to various languages of the world. So it is being measured, the civilizations and the culture. on. Sorry. This is called the significance, a religious significance, which is common in all parts of the world. This is possible only through translation. In countries which are multilingual like India, we have a homogeneous culture, and intercultural understanding is possible only because of translation. This translation has got a synthesis, and it is easily realized that it has supplied the materials, the Indian literature, and the literature of various other genres, the ideas, and the movements that take place. It is a craft. Now, translation as a craft. There is a controversy. Now, translation presents a controversy of the feasibility of literal and free renderings. Some people, they like to translate it freely. That is called free translation. Some people, they like to do it literally. That is called literal translation. Now, there is an argument. Nobody can do literal translation as it is because there is a variance in the language. Only on the basic of the sense of the original, there is an effort that is being made. And the style of the original has to be retained. That has to be taken to the wellness of the target language. This is very important. One way, it is neither a performance that can be achieved rightly without imagination. The texture of translation should be appropriate and it must be refined as possible. It must be perfect. There is a great challenge. The problem, when we go to the problems, it goes well beyond the distinction between verse and prose, or even literary and the colloquial. Only by the virtue of the nuances in style does literature become an art. Definitely, the literature is obliged to transmit the style as far as possible. Definitely, it may not add that most richly endowed languages are the most flexible, for they permit many styles and manners in composition. Our own times appear especially fruitful for translation. Now, the scholarly industry has opened the translators field wider. Today, translators are required all over the world. It has attained great rightful dignity. It has become a part of effort in internationalism and cosmopolitanism, and this gives a characterization in the better part of modern life. The further aspects of translation is the interest. Clearly, it implies not only the knowledge of two languages, the poetic sense, maturity in both the languages, the intensive and the extensive. So, this translation, it is not enough. It is, when you translate, it is simpler than the book. It is easier for the translator to task once they understand the original text. The degree of success is achieved, definitely, when they know the subject in a relevant manner and they translate into the equivalent relevance. The volume of the work done by the translators is really impressive, but it consists of more or less competent translation of materials which are of technical interest, whether religious, philosophical, scientific, anthropological, and so on. Today, translation, it serves as a purpose. It has served a good purpose, but it is not equal to the original. So it is neither a creation nor an art. It is a craft and an art. It is like a craftsman job. So all thoughtful translators, they know this. He's not merely translating the words. If he is rightly directed, a translator is translating a civilization. He is translating a culture. That is the role of a translator. Sukanda Chowdhury, she explains in one of her books, in the words of Homi Bhabha, cultural translation is not simply appropriate or adaptation. It is a process through which cultures are required to revise their own systems and values by departing from their habitual or inbred rules of transformation. Ambivalence and antagonism accompany any act of cultural translation because negotiating with the difference of other reveals the radical insufficiency of our own system and the meaning and significance. She beautifully explains, wonderfully, there must be the impact of the cultural equivalence, the theme, not leaving the meaning of the original and the target. It must be revised. There must not be any antagonism in any act of the cultural translation. The significance is more important. The purpose of translation is more important. Today, translation is used as a teaching aid. A language which has got the maximum number of translations is the richest language in the world. English language has got many translated works from various languages across the world. French, Russian, Greek, Latin, Tamil, Telugu, Hindu, Sanskrit, so many. Bengali, so many works. It is an integral part of language teaching. Many scientific materials, journals, many informations are being translated. So, intellectual translation, this makes the development in our intellect. There is an intellectual development and it is not just possible. A translator, he just changes the culture. He gives more knowledge. Uday Narayan Singh, he says, to update our development is not easily possible. To update our knowledge and science and technology, translation is important. Translation is 100% important. Scientific technological improvements, it depends upon the capacity of translation of any one of the European languages. We need to know, how do we know about the world? We need to know a language, otherwise it is translated. You take the news, it is being translated. Today, all of us watch cricket. People who don't know English, they watch the Tamil commentary or the Telugu commentary, the Hindi commentary. They know through Kannada commentary, Telugu commentary, yes, but they are knowing, they know the game, but they want that only when there is commentary, we get a great excitement, and definitely we watch cricket. The commentary gives an impact. It is being translated. The various commentators from various languages are doing it. So we love cricket naturally. Not only the game, the impact of the commentary makes us still watch the game. Let it take WWF. That is being put in all the sports channels. Definitely. Take up the Discovery Channel. It was once only in English. Now it is telecasted in all the languages. So people are able to know through translation, we are getting greater knowledge about everything. So there is interlingual skill. A translator must master, he must know to master and get a quick speed translation and know the psychological problems while teaching the theories and the practice of interpretation, because not everyone is an excellent person in another language. Only when we go to another state, we know the problem of speaking. Not everyone is an expertise, right? So we find the socio-cultural problems. We know. So everywhere, the socially, politically, active people, they know it. So this brings the world together. This translation, once there is proper diction, you know how to translate, you're a wonderful creator. Whatever the purpose the translation might serve, it's a new creation. So once it is translated, it is actually a new creation that is reaching the people. So there is no synonymity between the languages or the language within, but it is a binary of the original text. It is replicated. So it must serve as the original and the translated work. So it must be impossible to compare. There is the constant attempt to transpose the lexis of one tradition and on art, music, medicine, and other expressive phenomena over to another. Besides creative writing, translation has now permeated into painting, sculpture, performing arts, and other art forms, freely drawing forms, and contributing to the dynamics of very different kinds of textbooks. Now, beyond all this, when we come across all these translation, we come to one part of translation, that is the problems in translation, which every translator need to know. Every translator. Translation is a science. So when we do an experiment, there is a problem. Translation is like mathematics. So we undergo problems when we do a mathematical problem, right? So the problems in translation, it arises from various sources. One problem is that it cannot fully reflect the original text. It is a cultural handicap. It cannot echo the original text, but it must look like an original. So no translation can bring or convey the charm of the original work. There is a need for interrelativity. In spite of inherent limitations in translation, we resort to translation. Definitely. Poetry is untranslatable in its true form. It is very difficult to be translated. It is only a remaking. Still, we make an attempt to cultural compulsion, our interest. The problem in translation arises when the source language and the target language belong to various different families, cultural backgrounds, syntactic structures, and the geographical conditions. Words cannot be the same, but you need to give the equivalent. So if the source language and the target language belong to the same family, then the difficulties are less. If the words don't have identical equivalence in the source language and the target language, naturally, then the translator has to give the description of the word. Equivalent description. This is called dynamic equivalence. Dynamic equivalence. If he is not able to give the word. So references to historical and religious books, for example, Lord Shiva is being written. It is only a transliteration, right? So onomatic words like buzz, off, kiss, everything, they don't have parallel translated words in Tamil or any other language. So they are only here translation. We have, while translating, we make a compromise. The art of making compromise is being done. Now, with the translator faces all these words. So in such fields, in such as science, technology, business, law, public administration, management, and medicine, which constantly come up with new sets of terms, it is a great challenge for the translator. They cannot give the equivalent words. While translating also, it has to be a sensible translation. Definitely. The word rupee, it has become rupiah. In Tamil, it has become ruba. Right? So when we take the terms, definitely it takes. There is a great difference in dimension when we translate. So translation has got its psychological impact also. The peculiar instance of speech activity in course of which a number of psychological difficulties have also to be overcome. Because when we don't give the right word or expression or the right word of equivalence, there is a problem. It becomes a communicative problem. Right? The meaning is not given properly. So this cross-cultural communication is very complex. It is very complex. It greater roles, and it depends on the complementary roles of the speaker and the listener. Definitely, by creating there is a great problem when we translate the metaphors, imagery from one language to another. You cannot translate because what the poet has thought is not the same. How could we equally translate? Poetic translation is really a one challenging task when we do it. So the problem of translating literature now today we have got something called the machine translation. Machine translation, it is only technically translated. We have scientific translation, machine translation. Machine translation does not give you correct grammatical translation. It is done all over the world. It does not give you the correct meaning what the original text feels. So what happens? There are differences. It allows the people to make changes. So when there are changes being made, the originality of the original text is lost. The original meaning is lost. It involves a complex cognitive process while you're decoding the message of one text and you're encoding into another text. Today, there are so many modern translators which influence great translation process. They derive ideas from sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, anthropology, and other disciplines. They try to work hard and move to make it more flexible and testable in the theory of translation. It has become very significant and an instrument of communication in all branches of human knowledge and experience. Take up the CBI people, they get the news. It has to be translated from the local language. It has to be translated into Hindi and English, and it has to be sent to the center. So the local language, when it comes in the machine language, the machine text is not the same. So this machine translation is not completely grammatical or thematical. They get the information, that is it. Machine translation, it is not a correct source of your language. It is a machine, that's it. It does not give the correct content. And grammar in the total source language and the target language is not the same. This is again, pronunciation sometimes confuses in one language and the another language. Sometimes it is also misinterpreted. So the grammatical formation of the sentences is wrong. Definitely. So when we do this translation, it is again a problem. So these problems the translator has to undergo. Any language is like a sponge. Today, words from other languages are absorbed into target language. So how many languages from Indian languages are being absorbed into English? And they are being written. As while translating the usage of the words in the local languages, it has got a great impact. It has got a great impact. And translating proverbs, it is again a challenge. It is again a challenge. There is a vast difference between human translation and machine translation. And words like phrases, quantifiers, the verbs, clauses, the WH questions, grammatically, and when it is written, the grammar form, the subject, verb, and agreement form in English is different from that of our Indian languages. The grammar is different. So you have to translate accordingly. When you write it as such, it is transliteration. It does not give you any meaning. So it is a science. So the theories, whatever people we speak, it is an exploration of the problems. And it's a great strategy in practical translation. And every step, what we make is a step towards systematic and the scientific study of translation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Very informative, ma'am. It was very much liked by the research scholars. They are very happy about our topic because so
Thank
many
you.
persons doing their research in translation studies
Okay.
due to the technical glitches, they have very much afraid of it because the session will be cut off from hereafter. But they are happy by your reconnecting. Very interesting, ma'am. Very informative. Very knowledgeable too. Dear participants, do you have any questions with ma'am? Let me see any questions in the chat box, ma'am. No questions, ma'am. Lot of positive feedback has come from the participant side, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am, one question: can all the cultural nuances of what is it? Nuances of your language be perfectly translated into some other language?
You can only bring the impact actually. Generally, only the cultural impact can be brought in. 100% we cannot bring out the cultural feelings. Example, I'm telling you, when we read the Ramayana, right? See, the Ramayana waters in the north, written by Valmiki, it is not the same as what Rajaji has written. There is a difference, right? He has tried to write out to the present trend, but he has not changed the original text. Naturally, when this is only a transcreation again, right? 100%. You are not supposed to change the culture, but you cannot give the impact also. That is translation. That is translation.
Yes, ma'am.
You must give the. But when you're talking about some culture, for example, when you read a novel from Punjab or you're reading about Kabuliwala, a story by Rabindranath Tagore, who is a Kabuliwala? A person from Kabul. So he is a person from the north. You must know about it, right? Or what are his words? When you read a Malayalam novel, read it in English from by a Malayali writer, he will give his own impact. A Tamil writer, he will give his own impact. When you read R.K. Narayanan, it has got its own impact. When we take Rabindranath Tagore, it has got its own impact. Today's writers, you take Arundhati Roy, there is perfection in language, but a touch of the originality of the culture and everything is there. We cannot change it. A British author writes, the smell of the soil is also there. An American author writes, there is a smell of the soil. When a black writer writes, an African or any other writer writes, yes, there is a smell of the soil. It cannot be 100%. Then when we translate, we have to give the impact that an author from South Africa has written. And then you are translating it so that it reaches the readers. It is only carrying across the meaning of one language, the source language, to the other language. It is like a bridge. Translation is like a bridge. But you are not supposed to change the work of the original. As like writing a prescription. If it is written Croson, you are going to write only Croson in your language. You are not going to change the original. Right?
Right, ma'am. Kindly participants, please don't send your personal links here because the participants will be collaborated. Why are you posting your links here? This is not the advertising or anything else. Please don't do like this hereafter. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, How can we translate the undertext in drama? It was asked by Sangeeta Dimati.
Pardon? May I know the question?
Ma'am, how can we translate the undertext in drama?
Which text? Any text. See, any text can be translated. When it is a drama, you can translate the text. That's not a problem. So many dramatic verses have been translated. The dialogues must be equivalent without changing the meaning, and the link between the dialogues must be continuous as it is in the source language. As it is in the source language, in the target language also, there must be continuity in the target language also without changing the meaning. Certain words have got its own native language impact. So you have to translate accordingly with its own impact on the native language. Any drama can be translated. Many dramas have been translated from one language to another. Many dramas.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's all, ma'am. The questions are that's all, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
And the participants asked for the PPT. Will you please get ready the PPT and send it to me?
I will send it. I'll send it to you.
Yes, ma'am. Because it's a very
Okay.
interesting topic, so they are asking it, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Due to
Hope
some
they-
network
Thank you for the
problem,
opportunity. I thank Dr. Sangeeta and Tiruvallur University for giving me an excellent opportunity. And I hope the audience have enjoyed the session and I felt it informative. Thank you for a wonderful opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, dear participants, last week certificates is still some 50 in pending. It will be sent to you, so don't worry about it. And I have sent the feedback link in the chat box and just fill it before 6 o'clock. After that, I will close it. And I kindly request you, please don't text me in my personal number. I will send the messages through the groups. And each and everyone come to my personal number and all asking for the feedback link and so on. So please avoid it. It's my request. And next week, you are going to give a one-day national level webinar on masculinity studies. Masculinity studies. I will prepare the brochure. It's not ready. I will send it in the group. I welcome you all for that too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Thank you for your invitation. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hope the program is informative.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah.